Welcome all today. I am Hemant Gangulia. I am the founder and CEO of INRI. I am excited to be hosting this webinar today on NRI Banking. And we have a special guest with us who will be our a speaker today, Mr. Zia Haq. He is the head of NRI business at IDFC FIRST Bank. And I'm personally excited to be hearing from him today, given his experience of almost 2 decades in the NRI banking space. Previous to IDFC, he was at Citi and then ICICI Bank. On another note, as an NRI myself, I'm also very interested to hear how does NRI banking particularly shapes up, the life of an NRI. Why is it important? What are the know-how and what are the key parts of do's and don'ts. I have been in the US for 7 years, but interestingly, only until the fourth year I came to know that I should have a NRE or NRO bank account. And I think I'm sure like a lot of us would have been in the same boat where a lot of these things are still unknown or kind of a myth in terms of what and how to go about especially banking, which is pretty basic, one should know, but it's quite interesting that a lot of it is still to be known. So with that, welcome Zia. Good to have you today.
Thank you so much, Hemant. It's a privilege to be part of this session with all your customers and clients. As you mentioned, I've been actually this is the 20th year. I joined NRI business in 2005 when I ICICI Bank as a relationship manager based in Chennai, and I
Mhm.
had really enjoyed being part of this journey. And I think I'm probably one of the few NRI bankers, if I may call it, who never worked outside India. So it's always been, working with NRIs on their India needs, while obviously there's a lot of coordination with, in my city days, with team in Singapore, in the UAE and London, etc., and in the US. But I've actually enjoyed, I think, understanding and listening and talking to customers, talking to understanding what they have in mind, and wherever possible, providing solutions. I think at
Mhm.
IDFC also, I think we're not exactly, while we are a newer bank, and most banks offer NRI banking some sort of the other. So it was a challenge for us to kind of create a proposition that would be meaningful for NRIs. So today, I think, Hemant, thank you for this platform. There's a lot that you will find in this PPT that may not be particularly new. Many of you all are part of this community because you have a certain level of, I guess, enhanced interest in investing in India and investments and financial requirements. So most of you will know many of these things. So the presentation will be very short. I think hopefully less than 10 minutes. The objective is to try to have a discussion, take questions from you all as much as possible, and if required, even take it post the session. So as some of you may have noticed, I'm actually part of the WhatsApp group that Hemant has put together. If you have questions, queries, I'm happy to address it on the group or take it offline. We've built a small community of people between chartered accountants, bankers who understand some of the nuances, and even him and then team with respect to KYC and some of the other challenges you'll face. I think he's done a great job in putting this community together in the last year and a half. So yeah, without further ado, we can go ahead with the slides. But happy to take questions, at the end and address some of your queries. Hemant, yeah, back to you.
Great, thanks Zia. So let's begin. As Zia kind of shared, the structure of this webinar would be to kind of go through a couple of slides to set some precedence on like set a stage, and then we'll go into a fireside chat and also open up the platform or the stage for a Q&A. So feel free to ask any questions on the Zoom chat. We'll take up, as when the time comes, and we'll try to answer as best as possible. Have Zia's input on that. Great. So let's begin. Okay, so before I just quickly jump in on the webinar, I just want to kind of introduce INRI. If this is still unknown, it's a one-stop financial platform for the 32 million Indian diaspora. We started with the motivation to simplify a lot of NRI finances with respect to banking, mutual funds, investments in general, remittance and payments. So our vision here is to build that one-stop super app for the NRIs, OCIs living globally. And just to talk about, how big is the platform, we have more than 11,000 plus NRIs, OCIs, and from 40 plus countries signed up as of today in less than 2 years. So without wasting much time, let's just quickly jump in and Zia, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hemant. I think once again, congratulations for putting this together. 11,000 customers is a very significant, achievement in a short period of time. I think there are enough gaps in this space for people to find solutions and address them. We are trying at our end,
Mm,
but it's not possible to do it on their own. So it's good to partner people who are in the same space. So anyway, quickly on some of these numbers which you probably already know about, India is the largest recipient of inward remittances or personal remittance as it is called. I think about 130 billion plus this financial year, right? And even the countries, the USA, Middle East, I think NRIs technically are in most of these countries. There's Middle East, USA, Singapore, Canada is not mentioned in this list, but it's high up there. UK, Europe, Singapore. Singapore mentioned Australia and the Far East. USA is still large, but if you add the Middle East altogether, it is larger than the US. Now, when you look at purposes, I think family technically sometimes is not necessarily very accurate because most NRIs may use this purpose. Yes, that's what family, but many of them would also use this money and invest. I think NRIs are very, if I may use the word correctly, very particular about finances. They have options. They have options overseas. They have options in India. They have a higher risk appetite to take in India as a country compared to, let's say, an FPI or a regular investor overseas. So that's why they've taken calls, I think, and the government has gone back to NRIs multiple times across IMD, RIB, and even the FCNR swap program in 2014, right? I think India needs NRI investments, and I think NRIs also find the fact that India offers a return that is, in most cases, better than what may be available overseas, or at least to diversify across their home country and in India. And in addition to that, there are some countries where it's difficult to settle, right? Many NRIs in the Middle East don't necessarily have the option to stay there permanently, unlike NRIs in the US, Australia, Europe, etc. So that also kind of determines the way people use their money, right? Yeah, Hemant, we can move to the next slide. I think one interesting point is that many times NRIs say I'm an NRE or I'm an NRO, right? I think it's very important to say that first of all, an NRI is an individual, an NRE, NRO, FCNR are accounts, and an NRI technically is not just not in my opinion an Indian passport holder. I think even a foreign national who is a PIO OCI is technically an NRI with respect to FEMA, right? Which basically means that if you qualify as an NRI, your financial rights in India are more or less the same, right? The ability to purchase property, to purchase investments, to open bank accounts in India. So technically, while you can't vote if you have an OCI card or a PIO card, you have the right. You have a right to reside in India without a visa if you have an OCI card. So technically, it gives you the best of both worlds, and that's why I think Indians who move overseas have such a strong bond with the country still. It's not just emotional; it's also financial, right? So I think the key difference in my mind is source of funds. So and technically, what differentiates an NRE and NRO both are rupee accounts. Both in both accounts, funds are held in INR. So as an NRI, you do obviously bear the exchange rate risk of rupee depreciating. But NRE is what you send from overseas into India and then deploy in India for whatever you want, right? I mean, whether you want to buy property, do investments, make payments, and the money goes back out without any restrictions. But all NRIs have some income in India. All NRIs will either already own property on which they'll earn rent of the sell property, then the property sale proceeds, or in case there's inheritance, wherein there is family wealth moving from parents or family to the NRI, or there are some assets that you held while you were a resident. It could be PPF, and we had a query in the group a few days back. PPF, EPF, or you have made investments in deposits, or you made investments in shares value as in India. All that comes back into an NRO account, right? So NRO account technically it's basically where the money comes in if you have a legitimate due in India. The very interesting point is that supposing, let's say, you have a friend in India and you buy him something, you buy him an iPhone, right? And you pay for it in with a US dollar card, and you give him the phone in India, and then he says, hey, you know what? You paid $1,200. Uh, I'm going to pay you 1 lakh rupees, and I'll give you a check or I'll do an NEFT into an NRO account. That technically is illegal, right? Because technically, you cannot do a transaction in foreign currency on behalf of a resident of India. No one's going to go after you, but there are many nuances that are there in the rules, which you have to be very careful about. When you're transacting with resident Indians, right? And that's why putting money in an NRO account, it needs to be a legitimate due that you earn. And RBI allows you to move money from an NRO account overseas, uh, like basically by checking whether taxes have been paid. And a bank needs to check two things. One is the source of funds, and second is ownership, right? So whenever you put money in an NRO account and you want to send money overseas or to an NRE account, your bank will check these two aspects. The taxation aspect will be confirmed by a chartered accountant. Banks don't have tax expertise. So those are the three things that technically banks will look at, right? Very interesting thing on dollar deposits. You can hold money in dollars in India currently in fixed deposits, right? So the FCNR or foreign currency non-resident program, it's called FCNRB, foreign currency non-resident within bracket banks. That's the technical term that is there. Most of the time it's in US dollars, but banks will offer you rates in other currencies. RBI technically allows a very, very high rate. Linked to the LIBOR and the benchmark rates. But I think no banks are able to offer those rates because at that rate it will be very, very expensive in INR terms. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, most rates range between 5.5% to 6%, or 5 to 6% on the short tenor, and maybe 3.5 to 4.5% on the longer tenor. Uh, yes, there's expectation that interest rates are going to fall, but the speed of fall probably is slowed down, and the rates may probably remain for the next 6 8 months. So as and when the Fed reduces rates, you can expect these rates to fall a bit. One point not mentioned in this presentation is Gift City. Gift City's come up in a big way in the last year and a half. IDFC themselves have just launched their big Gift City proposition not even a month back. So the challenge in FCNR is that the minimum tenor is 1 year, right? So supposing you want to keep money in dollars, and if you need money in 3 months' time, you don't earn any interest. So that's a challenge in FCNR deposits, and it's only from 1 year to 5 years. So now with dollar savings accounts being available, banks are offering rates, I think 3.5 to 5.5%. IDFC was 5.25% on a dollar savings account with with full liquidity, full repatriability, uh, uh, and I think the dollar deposit rates are a little lower, but there are some banks that are offering even higher rates for amounts higher than $1 million. So that's an additional option available in India. One is to park money in dollars, and second is to invest through the dollar route. There are many mutual funds are actually offering dollar NAVs right now. It's very early days, but maybe not a bad option to start an account and keep some money, see how it evolves, and look at that option, etc. Hemant, we can move from this slide. That's fine.
Okay.
Very quickly on the size of deposits, I think at a very high level, NRI deposits in India are about $160 billion, 160 billion, out of which NRE, which is basically a rupee deposit of money from outside India, is about 100 billion dollars, right? Now, NRI deposits is still large. It's about $28 billion. Now, the thing is that my submission to NRI is that don't keep any money in an NRO account. Get money into an NRO account, and once a year or twice a year, do the process of repatriation, wherein you're able to establish the source of funds, you're able to establish ownership of the funds, and a chartered accountant is able to give you a certificate. Now, the CA certificate is not very expensive. It costs between 3,000 to 5,000 rupees sometimes even less than that. It's worth it because what happens is that on $28 billion, that's assuming a bank is paying 5% interest, right? That's about $1 billion, a billion and a half in a year. On that, 30% tax is deducted. So technically, on this $20 billion, you're paying the government around 300 $400 million a year. So if you have money in an NRO account, take the trouble to look at the source of funds, talk to a CA, get a certificate, talk to your bank, and move the money to NRE, right? I mean, ideally, you should have as less money in NRO as possible. What is repatriable? There will be some transactions not repatriable, but most are, right? So there are two scenarios. One is what is called current income. So assuming you earn interest or you earn rent, right? There's no cap on the amount that you can move back into an NRE account in a year. But anything else, sale of financial assets, property sale, asset that you held when you're a resident Indian, all that can go up to $1 million a year. $1 million is 9 crores.
Mhm.
So most NRIs will not have assets more than 9 crores to repatriate in a year, right? So even if you need to do it over 2 to 3 years time, if you have 30 crores, do it over 3 years time. RBI doesn't give permission. It's a myth that if you can request a bank to ask RBI permission for amounts greater than a million. It will not happen. So I would not recommend you go down that path. But 9 crores or 8.9 crores is not a small amount of money to send out in a year if you have the source of funds and paid taxes, right? I think FCNRB has grown to an extent the last year with rates increasing, right? I think if you look at the growth last year, we've grown almost 8 billion in dollar deposits, only 4 billion in NRO, right? So and FCNR is growing, but it is not going to be a very large uh, amount of money compared to NRE and NRO in India, right? So Abhinav will take that question towards on taxation. Just one point, I think. So when we talk of tax, we talk of taxability in India, right? So obviously, your interest in an NRE account is not taxable in India, but you still need to report that interest when you file a returns in the US or anywhere, right? So it may be taxable in the US or Singapore, etc. Uh, there's also DTA. For some reason, DTA is not necessarily very popular. We offer it in our bank, and I think we have 150 customers who signed up. Uh, so that technically is just a lower TDS on NRO account. There's no impact on NRE and FCNR, right? So I think what is one is taxation, second is flexibility, right? Once money is in an NRE account, technically you don't need paperwork to take the money out of India if you want. Because from NRO, you can assume it's a 3 to 4 day process, right? You will give a request, the bank will find some error, they will say, hey, this is missing. Then you'll arrange the paperwork, and then sometimes it takes less time, but I have seen it take sometimes 10-15 days because documents are not available. So it's a one-time effort. I would recommend everyone to move money from NRO to NRE. Uh, and your bank should help you in most cases. In some cases, it is difficult, and we'll be happy to have a chat with that. Okay, Hemant. We've covered some of this already in the chat, right? I think an NRI has an option to invest in various states, invest in India, and I guess invest globally, right? I think some of us in India have started taking on some exposure outside India through Nasdaq or S&P 500 index funds, etc. You'll already have access to that, so you don't need to do that. And you technically can invest anywhere in the world. But investment in India, obviously, I mean, there's an article the other day in Mint about real estate investments in India. So it is an emotional decision. Many NRIs are keen to make the property purchase, and it's not fair to kind of put cold water on that investment. So real estate will continue to be a very powerful and a significant part of portfolio for NRIs, but there are challenges. Yeah, I think liquidity in India is not easy. When you sell, the taxation, etc., it requires help. My point is, it's possible. And the returns from a capital efficient point of view may not be as much as it was there probably in 2000 till 2010 till 2015 till 2020. But with rupee depreciating to an extent, equity returns being as high it is, NRIs have actually doubled down and invested more in real estate in the last 3 to 4 years time. So yeah, but I think go into the open eyes. Ensure you have a trusted advisor in India to help you with the transaction, and technically also maybe manage the property, right? So that if you have that in place, it makes sense to consider real estate as an opportunity. We have dollar deposits, and we spoke about rupee investments. There is on if you want to participate in the Indian secondary market, you have the option both of mutual funds and direct equity. Uh, uh, and so there are some nuances on the equity side. because an NRI's investments technically are considered a foreign investment. So it's part of the cap that every company has with respect to amount of holdings a foreigner can have in it. So whenever an NRI buys or sells shares, uh, the transaction has to be reported to the bank, and the bank in turn reports it to RBI, which is a fairly straightforward process. We do it, and most banks do it. Ours is a little bit more digital compared to the rest. Uh, yeah, okay. Mutual funds, I think Hemant is more of an expert than I am, but I think he's done some great work in getting NRIs to invest in mutual funds. Hemant will move.
Yeah.
Okay, I think just spend 2 minutes on this slide. I think everyone in India claims, and has great pride in India being digital, right? Unfortunately, India has become digital for resident Indians. It's not become so digital for NRIs yet, right? The access to Aadhaar is not that easy. OTPs don't necessarily come that fast. The entire eKYC process that is there is not necessarily there for NRIs. So for NRIs, it's still more difficult to open an account. We've tried to make it easier. We've got a web-based journey that's reduced the number of fields from about 45 to 50 fields to about 15, 20 fields. So you need to fill less fields. You can upload documents, but you still need to get documents attested by an authorized person in the country you reside in. In the US, we've tied up with a firm that does notary online notary live. And we have some types in some countries, obviously, but you still need to do that process. But once you do that and you open and the account gets opened, we arrange a courier pickup. Post account opening, our commitment is we will not take any courier from our customers for anything. Everything you can do either on a mobile banking app, or you can send an email to us, and we will maybe do a callback verification to check that the transaction is genuinely requested by you, right? So a mobile app has been rewarded multiple times. I think it's awarded among the top four apps globally by Forrester, and all customers who use it largely have kind of given fairly good feedback. So you can obviously, you see your savings account, you can transact and do your payments. You can do your investments and get your capital gain statements, etc., online on your PIS account. And we've got one of the most easy to use digital outward remittance platforms. So supposing you have money in India and you need to send money back overseas, you can do it completely online. You don't need to call a relationship manager. You don't need to send us a form. And this is both from NRO and from NRE. From NRO, it's a bit more complicated because you need to upload, the supporting documents. But if you have money in an NRE account, with a few clicks, you can send money back to any account of yours overseas.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, Hemant, just move. Some of the pain areas, right? I think some things to just keep in mind. Hemant keeps covering this in his discussions, converting account from resident to NRI to non-resident. It's a FEMA violation if you are an NRI and you hold a savings account. I don't think it's a large enough violation that for someone to go after you, but it's why take a chance? Assuming sometimes when you have enough assets available, then you can give somebody an excuse to go to kind of do an inquiry and come back. So it's important to go to your bank and say, hey, look, I'm overseas now. I have a savings account. Please convert it. If the bank gives you trouble, just move the money out to an account that's an NRE NRO account. Don't have money in an account that's resident. Don't have assets that are in resident status. Even your PAN. Now, technically, your PAN, once you file your returns in India as a non-resident, your circle officer will update your status as non-resident. If it's not updated as non-resident, and if you try and do an investment in a mutual fund in an
Mm.
NRI status, it will not go through, right? So basically, if your status is resident in your PAN and your Aadhaar and PAN are not linked, then your folio becomes frozen, right? So step one is to go to your circle officer, and it's an online process. They only need to see your passport. They'll see your entry exit stamp, and they will update your PAN. If you have an Aadhaar, and many NRIs do have an Aadhaar, do try and link it. But I think the one on the left is more important to update the PAN status update the status of your tax residence in your PAN, right? Uh, so we covered. I think one point on nominees is not just about NRIs. I think the amount of unclaimed deposits that we have
Mm.
is very very high. Unfortunately for NRIs, if an unfortunate event does happen outside India, you know, getting the paperwork to India, then the bank will expect some more. I think banks in India are expected to authenticate, let's say, a death certificate, which is more difficult to do. So we have people in our bank who technically need to reach out to, let's say, an embassy overseas and say, hey, you know what, this has occurred. Can you verify it for us? So I think getting a nominee updated is very important. Your nominee knowing that you have an account in these banks and that's generic guidance, not just to NRIs, but do that in case you have an account in India. Yeah, I mean, we can just move. Okay,
Okay.
I think what we'll do, Hemant, should we cover some of the questions in the chat before we go to our discussion?
Yeah, sure. Let's do the
Yeah.
questions on the Zoom chat. I can read out for you, or we can just go
You
from.
know, I can also read it. It's fine. I'm just seeing what I've already covered.
Mhm.
Recording, I think Mr. Pushkur, Hemant has recorded it. I have an OCI card, close and resident account. Yes, okay. So, okay, this is very interesting. OCI card just basically means that you're a person of Indian origin. It doesn't necessarily mean you're an NRI unless you stay overseas. Obviously, in your case, I'm sure you do stay overseas, right? But an OCI can technically stay in India permanently because he doesn't need a visa. An OCI staying in India as a resident of India. So that person has a resident account. But an OCI staying overseas technically becomes a non-resident Indian and is not permitted to have a resident account. So the right thing to do would be to close a resident account or convert it to NRO. Both options are available, right? And it is mandatory to file it. So okay, fine. Mandatory is a very interesting question. I would say it's highly recommended. Even if you don't have a single rupee of income in India, even if income is zero in India, and you have no taxable income, you file it as zero. In fact, if you, I don't know whether you looked at the data, 60% of all returns filed in India are zero income. So it's not like, there's a lot of data about the number of ITRs increasing, etc. But many people, don't have income and they still file. So even an NRI, smartest thing to do would be to file returns in India, even if you don't have income, right? So it's not mandatory, uh, but let's assume that you also have a record. So the thing is, assuming you filed 3 years, 4 years with no income, then you have that record available. Assuming you come back to India and you return to India, right? Then you have that continuous record available. So that's my recommendation. But I would recommend speak to a chartered accountant in India, get that advice, and he may say the same thing. Okay. Nimit, WhatsApp group, I think Hemant will share. I'm in the
Yeah.
US from last 3 years, but I came to before I had converted my Kotak savings to NRE. Okay. Is it mandatory? Yes. Okay. 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 So Ankit, the answer, if I mentioned in the past, you can go. The answer, like I mentioned in the past, it is mandatory to convert. It's very unlikely. I think banks don't have systems yet. Assuming, let's say, you have got Kotak mein NRE, NRO, and in HDFC mein it's savings. At a country level, the tracking is not there. So HDFC will not know unless we inform them, right? HDFC technically will allow you to continue a credit card in many scenarios. So there are processes available. So then I think they have got some card that will be available only on the NRO account, which will be usable only in India. Some, assuming you have a card that is also available to use overseas, then you have to make payment from your NRE account. So there are some nuances that are there. Even IDFC, for example, offers a credit card. We are very early in the credit card game, so we offer a secured card. We offer a card against a fixed deposit for NRIs. We will hopefully offer a unsecured card soon enough. But our card right now, I mean, it is a zero FX card. So in case you theoretically use it outside India, you get charged zero FX. But the only challenge is that all payments you need to do from your NRE account, not from your NRO account. That's a nuance that is there in our card, right? Uh, so Ankit, my recommendation is, talk to HDFC. They should give you a solution with about your card too. Abhinav, would make sense based on what your tax resident country taxes are. So Abhinav, I think uh, your taxation overseas will not matter whether your money is in NRO or NRE. You will have to pay tax either way, is my understanding. But your CPA will guide you. The difference is that from an India point of view, your money can move from NRO if the government of India believes that you own the money, and B, you pay taxes on it, right? And then they're willing to put it in NRE, but once it's in NRE, they don't earn any interest. They don't earn any tax on the interest that any bank pays you. That's why the government of India is looking at it like that, right? Uh, but you will probably have to pay tax irrespective of whether money is in NRO or NRE, right? Uh, WhatsApp group NRI definition. Okay, this is very interesting. So the NRI definition is by the, as per Government of India, is an individual who moves overseas for an indeterminate or an uncertain period of time. So basically, supposing you you're in India today, you get a visa to work overseas. Technically, you're an NRI from tomorrow. From a point of view, it basically means that because you plan to go overseas for an indefinite period, you are an NRI. From a tax point of view, the 180 days rule and that entire last 3 to 4 5 years logic comes into play. So from a tax point of view, you may be resident for a year or a year and a half after you are an NRI from a point of view, right? Uh, and it is residency, okay, residency, and basically says that if you're an Indian national with a right to work overseas, then you're an NRI. If you're a foreign national of Indian origin and you stay overseas, you're an NRI. Which account do you recommend for mutual fund investments, NRE or NRO account? So, okay, so this is very interesting. Theoretically, you can use either. You can use NRE or you can use NRO. Now, if I were you, I would try to do repatriation from NRO to NRE first, and then do investments from an NRE account, so that you have all your investments, source of the investment and the redemption in a repatriable account. Now, what happens is that, assuming from a tax point of view, it is the same, right? If you do a mutual fund investment from an NRE account, even then your the mutual fund house, so the AMC, will still deduct TDS and pay you back. So you will get a return post-tax payment irrespective of what route you use. Now, once the money is in an NRE account, technically you are free to take it out because all the at least the TDS has been done. You will still need to pay some tax basis your tax bracket, etc. But from a taxability point of view, the AMC has done its job, and once the money is in the account, technically you are free to move it out. So if I were you, I would not do investments or deposits or anything from an NRO account. I would try to get the paperwork in place, move money to NRE, and then do all my investments from there, whether in equity, whether it is in mutual funds, whether it's in even buying a house, right? Buying a house, try to debit an NRE account as far as possible instead of debiting an NRO account.
I just want to add a couple of points here based
Yeah,
on.
yeah, please go ahead.
So we have come across many NRI customers asking the same question, and just as you shared, I second that opinion or recommendation to invest from NRE because that gives you more repatriation flexibility. And even if you don't want to repatriate, it's okay, but it at least gives you that opportunity or that optionality in the future. And one thing I want to clarify, a lot of NRIs also have this question, what about the gain? So, people think, okay, my principal will come back to NRE. What about the gain? So, the good part is like with mutual funds, all the financial transactions per se, the money will come back to your NRE. So, redemption will come
NRE.
back to NRE. Unlike property sale where, the money comes to or the proceeds come to your NRO. So, that's a good thing to invest in the markets, specifically where even the returns or the redemption come back to your NRE. So it's a clean channel that way and also offering more flexibility.
Great, that's right. Yeah, Hemant, it's very important. Converting accounts. So technically, while you can convert bank account to NRO, you can't convert a demat account to NRO. You need to close the demat account and open a new demat account. So supposing you have a Zerodha account that will be linked to some savings account in India, and that demat account will be the resident demat account, right? You'll have some holdings in it. So what you need to do, you need to contact Zerodha and say, hey, I'm a non-resident now. Please close my demat account and open a new NRO NRE demat account. And then they will close the resident demat account and move the securities to the NRO demat account. You don't need an NROPIS account. You need an NREPS account technically, because only the investments you make on a repatriable basis are reported to the RBI. If it's not repatriable, then technically it's not required. And in fact, sometimes some brokers do recommend that, hey, you know what, do investments through NRO settlement account, it is called, because it's just less of a hassle. I'm not so sure, because I think it only makes sense to either just do it in mutual funds and NRE, and then take the trouble to get your NRE PS account set up once and then do investments through that. Unless you already have holdings. If you already have holdings in um, as a resident, and then you have holdings in NRO, right? Then you can't move from NRO to NRE. You need to sell the holdings, pay off the capital gain, and then repatriate the funds. Uh, so I don't know whether that Avdut, whether that answers the question. Can I open a non-PIS NRO account? Yes, the answer is yes. You don't need a PIS account for mutual funds. You can do it from your savings account. Uh, but okay, as I tried to open through Axis Bank NRE NRO account RN, but they said I have to be present for biometrics. Okay. You can open an account overseas. Yes, there are rules with respect to AMC is accepting investments from US persons, right? So they're saying that, okay, fine, you need to be in India, or you need to send, or it has been reverse solicitation. There are some very few mutual funds which accept investments the AMC, while the NRI is overseas, but it is possible. So I think biometric, I'm not clear on that rule, but net you can open an NRE NRO account while you're sitting overseas. Then your bank should be able to facilitate investments in some mutual funds. Uh, 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 and there's a list available. We can get that shared.
Yeah.
And you can open a PS account sitting in the US. There's no problem on that. Technically, Yodha will allow you to open a broking account if you want. And IDFC, for example, will allow you to open a demat account and a PS account sitting in the US. PS account you can open on a mobile app, right? I think IDFC is one of the few banks that allow you to open the PS account. If you're an IDFC NRI customer, you can click and open the account online. We issue the permission letter also real time, right? And you can link any broker you want. There's no restriction. I think it's some 30 brokers that you can choose to link to your IDFC account. So Avdut, if you want, you drop us a message. We'll sort it out for you. I think it's doable.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
I
thank
think
you. Thank you
either
so
either
much.
you can mail Hemant and you can drop us a lead and we'll get it done. And you
Yeah.
can mention the same
Yeah,
points.
Yeah.
Can
yeah, thank
Bro
you so
have a
much.
saving? Yeah, no problem.
Just want to add a
Can
couple of experiences here. So, I mean, I think, Zia, what we have seen with banks in general in India is, like sometimes there are unique journeys. Each bank could have a different journey in terms
Yeah,
of being, whether for NRE, NRO, or even for investments and then DMAT. Like PSU banks could be very different from, private banks. And then even in private banks, it's great to see that, IDFC First has a much better journey or a more seamless one. But we have seen like some banks may not be favoring that kind of onboarding, which is more seamless and digital. And that's where NRI specifically find it challenging, and particularly from the US Canada it becomes even stricter. And I think what the MF point was more around, as you said, like some AMCs allow for it, and that is because of FATCA compliance. Those who are doing it that are only eligible, and we are good to have INRI at least filtering that funds out. So if you need that fund list, Abdut, you can look at INRI.
yeah. Sorry. In fact, I mean, technically, once you have an account with a bank like IDFC or whoever, you could see the thing is IDFC also offers mutual funds,
Mm.
etc. But INRIs, I guess, in this game, right? That's their core competence. So you can choose them. I mean, I'm sure you'll get a right inputs from Hemant and team.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
Akhil.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. Can bro have savings account with joint account with parents? Can NR? I'm assuming the question is, can NRI have a savings account or joint account with parents? Okay, so this is a very interesting one. Uh, Unfortunately, an NRI can be, let's say, a joint holder in a parent's. Let's say your parents are in India, they have a savings account. You can be a joint holder in that account, but unfortunately, the operating mode has to be formal survivor. So you can't operate the account. Technically, you're like a pseudo nominee. right? So as long as as long as your parents are alive, unfortunately you can't operate the account. That's point number one. Point number two, your money can't go into that account, right? So supposing, let's say there's a property sale or there is rental, etc., that money can't go into this account. So I don't think it makes sense. I mean, while it's possible, and even the other way, technically you can be the first holder, and somebody in India can be a
Mhm.
joint holder in the account, but they can operate the account. So technically it is marginally better than a nominee, but I think having a nominee and a will is probably a better approach than using this approach of it's sad because many times it makes sense. Parents are aged, they can't operate the account. You want someone you trust can to operate it, but this is not solving the problem. So I don't know what the answer is to kind of address that issue. How to transfer abroad from sale of any property. So, Amina, assuming you have sold property that was in your name, and the buyer would have given you a check or put an RTGS, that money will go into an NRO account. So once your money is in an NRO account, then you need to follow a repatriation process. Your bank will basically look at the sale deed, which is right, and they'll also, assuming the property is inherited, they'll want to look at some sort of conveyance or inheritance basis which the property came to you. So assuming you have the purchase deed, then you don't need, let's say, the will. Assuming it's inheritance, then they look at how the property came to you, and then for the sale, then the property moves from you to the buyer, and obviously the sale proceeds come to you. The buyer will normally deduct TDS, which is obliged to do when he's selling to an NRI. Those papers will be available. Your chartered accountant will certify that you've paid taxes, and post that, your bank will send the money overseas. Can you link? Okay, fixed deposit through NRO. Will the bank automatically deduct these taxes? Yes. Okay, bank deducting taxes we are very good at. DTA credit, you need to check with Hemant. You want to address the DTA credit wala bit?
So the DTA
If you,
credit is something that you can get as a tax credit in the US, let's say, or in a foreign country. So you will have to have this tax credit certificate, or you can claim that you have paid taxes for an amount of, let's say, $1,000. So you need to convert that amount. Let's say you paid about 85,000, comes about to be $1,000. So you can say that I paid so much taxes in India, and that might be a form to provide this credit when you're filing, let's say, taxes in the US or in a foreign country. So this is how that DTA will work ideally.
yeah, you're right. So you get credit. I think there's a paperwork involved. You should get credit.
Mhm.
So that Jagetia 6 months. Okay. Yeah, I mean, see, the thing is, once you come back to India, a bank will not come after you. You need to declare to the bank. The best person to decide is you and your chartered accountant, right? I think at what stage you want to do that. Only the bank will not allow you to have two statuses. You can't have both the resident status and an NRI status. You have to have one status, right? So that's one nuance that is there. Uh, there's no up to 6 months, no problem at all. There are some NRIs who don't convert their accounts ever. They want to keep the status forever. And we ask them to do re-KYC, and then we ask them to give visa, and then they get very upset that, yeah, how can you question my status? So they're very emotional NRIs also. I think you're okay. If you're willing to do it in 6 months' time, you're perfectly fine. Okay, how much of a loss do we see when you move funds from INR to USD, INR to USD? Current fees. Okay, so I think banks will charge you a spread on the interbank rate or on the card rate. So it should range between 50 paisa to one and a half, 150 paisa. Sometimes less than that, depending on how well you negotiate with the bank. Some banks don't charge a fee for the remittance. IDFC is one of those which will not charge you a fee. They'll not charge you a correspondent bank charge, but there will be some sort of a spread on the prevailing rate, right? So supposing today the rupee is 85.9. Then maybe the bank may charge you 86.2, 86.3, 20, 30 paisa normally is the average uh, that is charged. Repeat the point about NRE account and government earning tax from interest. Okay. So Rafi, if you have money in an NRI account, right, then with any bank, HDFC, ICICI, etc., some bank will pay you 3.5%. IDFC will pay you a little bit more, but that's a sales pitch, right? So we pay 7.25% on savings account. So let's assuming you have 10 lakhs, then at the end of the year you'll earn 70,000, odd rupees, right? And if the money is an NRI account, that 70,000 rupees is tax free for you. So 70K is almost like, one trip, one flight ticket to Europe, at least one way or two way, depending what time of the year you book the ticket, right? So money in an NRI account, interest is not taxable in India, right? But assuming the same 10 lakhs is there in an NRO account, and we earn the same 70,000 rupees interest, then the bank is obliged to deduct TDS of 33% or 30% plus cess, right? So 40,000 rupees you technically will lose and pay to the government. So on the 28 billion of NRO balances, right? Uh, Depending on the rate of interest, there is some interest being generated and paid to the NRI. On that interest, the banks are deducting TDS and paying the government. So my recommendation is please move money from your NRO account to an NRE account. Uh, it'll be a little painful one time, but try to do it once a year or twice a year.
Is there any limit to that, Zia?
Yeah, so basically, if it's current income, right, then there's no limit. Current income basically means rental, interest is also current income. Uh, so those are things that where you can technically repatriate an infinite amount of money. But assuming it is a sale of financial asset or it is inheritance, right? Then there is a limit of $1 million per financial year per PAN, right? So it's about 8.6 crores in today's money in one financial year, right? Canadian citizen. Yeah, I think mutual funds are perfectly fine. Yeah, there will be restrictions for US Canada residents, but there are enough AMCs that will allow you to invest in mutual funds, and you can buy shares. I think on direct equity there are no restrictions. Most brokers will allow you to buy and sell shares. Uh, FDs are obviously fine. Savings account FDs are fine. Dollar deposits, Gift City account is fine. Mutual funds also are possible. As Hemant mentioned, there are few curated funds that will offer you that option. I have, before I moved overseas. Now, since I have converted my resident bank account to non-resident, okay. Very good question. So ideally, and in fact, I did this for a friend of mine who moved. I mean, I've done it quite often, but a friend of mine moved overseas to Singapore, I think 6-8 months back, right? And I had convinced him to open an IDFC account, savings account when we opened. So he had all his money, his savings account, his bank locker, and all his mutual funds, which he had invested through other banks. I made him move, the broker code to IDFC. So we went through the entire process of actually converting all his holdings. So first, the savings accounts, he gave a request to convert the account to savings. Then through us, he wrote to each of the mutual fund houses saying, hey, you know what? I am now an NRI. This is a copy of my NRO statement. I have got funds in HDFC mutual fund. I have got funds in ICICI mutual fund and this folio. Please change the status for me. So each AMC will update their records for that folio that this person Zia is now an NRI. So they'll convert your folio to an NRO folio. You don't need to sell your holdings. You don't need to sell your holdings if you become an NRI. You can retain all your holdings and have it in NRO status. And as and when you sell the holdings later, the proceeds will come into your NRO account. So the answer is not leave it as it is, right? The answer is you need to convert the status to NRO. And incremental investments do from NRE. Don't do incremental investments from NRO. So assuming you sell your NRO holdings later, repatriate it to NRE, and then invest further. But you don't need to forcefully sell any holdings. Either shares or mutual funds, both can uh, can remain. Limit from NRE account. NRE account no limit, bhai. So you can send $1 billion out if you want. If you have that money, you can send as much as you want from NRE. Mutual fund folio. What for mutual funds? Close the resident one. We covered this, Ankit, I think. We don't need to close it. You need to convert the status to NRO. Oh, actually, that's your second point. You're right. You need to convert it to NRO. Property in India purchased before I moved to Canada. I am a Canadian citizen. Can I still kill property? No, you can keep it here. There's no harm in keeping property. Whenever you do sell, you will have to do the repatriation process that like we covered. And when you do sell, you need to declare status as an NRI to the buyer. He has to deduct TDS or TCS, I think, and pay you. Can we open an NRI, NRO account and demat account from Dubai? Yes, you can. No presence, unfortunately, but yeah, we hopefully will have presence soon. But Parthivi, you can do it while sitting in Dubai. Yeah. It's not. I mean, it's not very easy, but we'll help you out. You fill a form digitally, and then you need to go meet somebody, meet some bank in Dubai who'll stamp your passport and address proof, and we'll arrange a courier pickup. So I think Hemant is going to publish a link wherein you guys can, if you're interested, you can start the IDFC NRI account journey, and then somebody will guide you through the steps.
Yeah, just to
Mutual fund
add.
asset in demat. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
When
just adding on that, like when Zia mentioned putting the link. So basically, we have a partnership with the IDFC First, where we are a banking partner in terms of providing leads and helping NRIs open a NRE or NRO bank account with them. I'm gonna post the link, but yeah, that's the bit of a context there.
Yeah. So Nimit, it's a very good question. Yeah. I think mutual funds and demat in India, no, they've got some challenges. One is, I think, okay, let's assume that you have investments in a folio route, right? You can technically change the bank mandate. Then anybody, you can fill a redemption request through any mutual fund distributor. It will go straight to same RT. RT will process it, and the money come into a savings account, right? So in India, it's simpler. If it's in the demat, you have to only go through that DP to do the redemption, right? So I personally don't have my holdings in demat. I have shares in demat and I have mutual funds in the folio route. Even purchase transactions are easier, in my opinion. But anyway, he can answer this question better than me. But my recommendation is the folio route in India.
Yeah, I think a folio route is much convenient. In case of DMAT, you have this conversion of DMAT that adds the to the complication. And even if you let's say buy it from NRI DMAT, then if you let's say move back to India, then there's a resident DMAT. So I think if you're interested just in mutual funds, best to go through the folio route.
So Suresh Kumar, demat is required if you want to participate in secondary market or IPOs. Otherwise, yeah, mutual fund ke liye, I don't think it's required. Uh, just remember you're earning 3.5%. If you may want little higher, you come to us. Kaushik, let me just go to Kaushik's question. Do I need to sell? No, you can't. See, the thing is, this is the thing, right? Now, because your status is NRI, your redemption can't go into that account till you change the status with the AMC. So you need to tell the AMC saying, I'm an NRI, please change my status. They'll make a run around and say, give me a bank statement, give me this, give me that, but please do it. And if you go through the right distributor, they may do it for you properly, right? Because it's not easy to coordinate with 10 AMCs on your own. It's better to go through some bank who you trust, uh, and somebody who's done it a little bit, right? So you will have to probably consider that. Can NRIs have lockers? Definitely, subject to availability, of course. Definitely NRIs can have lockers, just like any resident Indians. Most banks offer lockers. There's a huge queue and waiting list, etc. Some even IDFC technically doesn't have lockers in all branches, right? So we have lockers in some cities. So it's not like I can come here and promise you a locker to all everybody in this call. It's not possible. But assuming you're interested if you're assuming you have an account and you're interested in locker, then depending on which city you are, the right people in the bank will take you through it. We offer lockers to NRIs, and I think it's something they appreciate quite a lot. Is my If my father does a sale of a apartment which we constructed and wants to give me the money and put the money in another account, how can I see? Gift from family can be repatriated, so that's not a challenge. But here again, I mean, Sharat, I don't have specific transaction expertise. I would recommend everyone needs to have a CA that they trust in India, and they'll probably give a better answer. Uh, so, see, assuming a father sells the property and he sells it in his name, and the money comes to him, right? Then he has to pay tax himself, and then post tax, technically he can give money to you, and through a gift. Now, the only little bit of a fly in the ointment on gifts from from residents to NRIs is that this is under LRS limit for the resident. So what it means is your father, if he's going to put money from his account to your NRO account, and he's going to say that it is a gift, then he has to, then on that payment, 20% TCS will apply. So supposing he sends you 21 crore, 20 lakhs is the amount of tax that he will pay, right? Obviously, when he files returns, he'll get a refund. But gift route is not that viable anymore, primarily because, and especially when you do it from the same bank, assuming your father's account is in HDFC, your account is in HDFC. If he's going to transfer money from HDFC to you, HDFC will deduct 20 lakhs from his account and then pay 1 crore to you, right? So please just figure that out. Gift is not the best approach, but a CA will give you a better answer on this. Rajendra Jain, once you sell holdings from an NRO account, what will be the tax? Long-term shares. No. Yeah. Once, see, the thing is, uh, see, this is the TDS that the AMC is paying, right? Or the broker is paying. Now, depending on your tax bracket, you may be able to set off, assuming there's some capital loss, you may be able to set it off, then technically you may get a refund, or you may have more tax payable, right? So your CA will look at all your transactions and all your capital gains and then determine whether you need to pay more tax or not. So once the CA certifies it, that all that your due taxes are paid, your bank will move money from NR to NRE. See, bank doesn't have expertise in tax. Right? If you ask me what is tax rate payable to you, I may need to read some whatever circular and guide you, right? So our expertise is checking source of funds and transaction is clean whether the money belongs to you, right? For taxation, we'll rely on a CA. He'll give a 15 CSCB, and based on that and he'll say, hey, taxes are paid. We'll say, okay, cool, move money to NRE account. But I think the example you gave, I think largely, the funds will be available in NRE account. Source of funds in my NRI account is from my closed Indian accounts and some rental income. Yes, you can. You will have to give some documents to indicate uh, the source, but it is possible. Hi all, here is the link to open. Okay, as an NRI, I sell a property. Avoid income tax on sold price. Okay. Sorry. I should have read the last sentence. I think avoidance is not the right word. You can reinvest, right? So then, if you sell property, see, unfortunately, as an NRI, I think the default option is the TCS is deducted first. So you need to first apply to a circle officer, say, hey, you know what? Yeah. So I think Ajay has already answered. And Ajay, you want to answer the question, Ravi's question? I think. Avoiding, yeah, infrastructure bonds are available, and I think purchasing property again is possible. And you can also apply for a lower TCS rate, but that's not. I mean, and then someone like Ajay actually assists you in those transactions.
Yeah, hi, yeah. So basically, his question is about using Section 54 EC,
Yeah,
where you can reinvest the gain amount into bonds prescribed, like REC or NHI bonds. Up to 50 lakh rupees, you can invest the gain amount and claim for the exemption.
correct. I think Abhishek's question is same as Ravi's, right? I think so. While tax-free is not the right word, TCS will apply. And assuming it's not taxable, then your parent will get refund, but that will be at the end of the year. Only good part is that if you pay if TCS is deducted in Q1 and they'll actually pay you some interest on that. So Ajay, I'm right? You get some interest on advance tax that you paid.
Yeah, you get the benefit of it.
Then okay. So assuming you don't pay tax, then the government will charge a penalty. If you pay tax in advance and it's not due, then they pay you some interest. So that way, at least
Correct.
the refund process in India is really good. Yeah. So you don't need to worry about that. And my submission on advance tax is set it off against other tax obligations. So don't look at TCS on LRS as this is for resident, not for you all. 20% TS is okay, assuming you have some capital gains on which you need to pay advance tax anyway. You can avoid that by through this route. Okay, I think we've kind of covered the question on the chat. Uh,
Cool. Thanks, Zia. This was great to, just answer through the questions. I think this covered or uncovered a lot of, myths and just questions around NRI banking. And just want to also introduce Ajay. So for everyone, Ajay is a experienced chartered accountant, especially specializing in NRI taxation for more than a decade. And great to have him join the call today. Thanks, Ajay.
Thank you, Hemant. Always a pleasure.
Uh, so I think I did had a couple of questions for you, Zia, but I think that got covered by the Q&A and also through the slides. But I just want to focus a bit more on the IDFC first. I understand, like, I mean, we got a good glimpse of NRI banking and want to understand from the bank's perspective or from your perspective, how IDFC First is kind of, making changes or revolutionizing the banking, particularly for the NRI segment, and like the top reasons, one could go for IDFC First.
yeah, Himanshu, yeah. So I think, guys, first of all, everyone, thank you for your patience. I think it's great that on Sunday morning or afternoon, evening, wherever you are, you'll have spent time. I think we have great aspirations to be a customer-friendly bank, to do things well, to give a good proposition. And I like to believe we've got somewhere. I think we can do better. I think, but two, three key points. One is we've tried to make account opening a little easier for NRIs compared to what RBI allows and what other banks do. So our application process is completely digital. We allow you to get upload documents of your passport, your visa, your address proof. We also guide you on who can, let's say, help you attest those. We'll arrange a courier pickup to get those documents. And then we have a process of kind of activating the account is fully digital. What is on the proposition? Proposition, we believe that an NRI normally doesn't transact as often as someone who's resident in India, right? Um, um, so there is very often idle money lying in a savings account, right? So for an NRI, if you have say 5, 10, 15 lakhs in a savings account, and assuming you're getting paid 2.5, 3%, the opportunity loss is quite high. So we are offering 7.25% on balances above 5 lakhs. And we pay interest every month. So assuming you don't transact often in your account, then on the interest that is paid in month one, you're getting interest on the interest plus principal in month two. So technically, your money compounds in a very, very simplistic way, right? I think that's on the returns. On the deposit side, I think our rates are competitive. We offer both rupee deposits and dollar deposits. We recently launched Give City. Uh, but what is important is how we transact after account opening, right? I think most NRIs have access to fairly advanced banking apps and fintech apps in the countries that they reside in, and they use for certain quality of UI UX, which I mean I think banks in India have evolved very strongly, but not all of them have kind of have improved their processes and digital interface as much as possible as some other banks. So ours is ranked in the top 3 or 4 globally by Forrester. So you get access to a great banking app. You get access to all products, whether it is savings, payments, remittances, investments, mutual funds. Obviously, even INRI does offer, and so do we. But IDFC also has a pretty strong private banking and wealth management arm, which kind of looks at your existing portfolio, does a review of what is both held away and held with us, and offers products across AIF, PMS, etc. also. But that's a more evolved process. I think people can only consider wealth management after they experience the bank itself. It's very not fair to pitch that in the first discussion. Pricing is competitive. Even on remittances, we understand all of you have access to Remitly and Wise and digital payments. We still only permit only have essentially a wire transfer. So assuming the amount is large enough and you're willing to pay the wire transfer fee that your bank overseas charges, everything else we'll take care of. We charge zero correspondent bank charges. We'll convert the funds INR at a much finer spread. And ensure you earn more INR for all the plans you have in India. Right? I think my pitch to customers is that if you have 15 lakhs in an IDFC savings account, you can technically pay for at least one or two air tickets to India in a year with that money. Which is not a bad proposition. I think 70,000, 1.5 lakh rupees of savings is not bad, to switch banks, right? I think all of us um, are looking at building uh, some amount of returns in our money, right? And I think another important point that I wanted to bring out is that we are very keen to reach out. See, we don't have presence overseas. We have 600 branches in India. So you are covering most of the country, and we have very strong digital presence. Post account opening, our commitment is nothing will come to you on courier. You do everything on the app or on net banking. If you can't, then you send us an email. We'll call you back and do a verification. And we want to keep evolving processes that we need to take less requests on email also. So that's our going and hypothesis. Uh, we are also very keen to talk to people, right? So obviously, Hemant has a community that's strong. Some of you may have smaller communities, in your locality, in your community, in language, or let's say, even in the north, in the east coast, in the west coast, WhatsApp groups, so people like Ajay, myself, we're happy to talk to people as much as possible. You want to set up a discussion, either me or someone in my team will be happy to address, take questions. We're also reachable. My mobile number is there on the INRI WhatsApp group. Uh, so we're happy to talk. Yeah, we're happy to talk, and we've done some webinars in the past. Wherein we've spoken about things as simple as basic as the global economy, right? So we're willing to listen, and wherever there is feedback, willing to kind of change. That's in a nutshell our pitch, Hemant. I think any question I'm happy to take. But yes, I think if you are able to set up or invite us for any online seminar that you may have, we're happy to join.
Yeah, sure. So, I think as Zia rightly pointed out, the discussion doesn't end here. You guys, could join the INRI WhatsApp link. I'll just share in the chat as well for quick access. But we'll also share these links after the webinar through an email post. So all those who have joined today, they're as a invitee. So we will share this through an email and many more links that you can find them handy. Um, I'm sure you guys would have more questions, and we could probably not answer all of them here, but feel free to be on the link after this. Um, with that, thank you, Zia. It was a pleasure hosting you today. I know for people who don't know, Zia is joining from India, and this is post midnight. So I really appreciate his candidness even at midnight. It's a Sunday night, and extremely thankful for him to take out his busy time, his family time, and joining us, for this webinar.
No, my pleasure. Yeah. My pleasure. I think it's great to hear your questions, get to hear, talk to a community of NRIs. And like I said, we're willing to do this as often as required. Uh, I can share my number here, but it's also there in the group. So whatever works for you all. And you can drop a link, and then someone in the team will reach out to you. So Dinesh and a few others have questions. I would recommend if you can just reach out, and we'll get back to you on these points. No problem at all.
Yeah, yeah. And Ajay is also on the same WhatsApp group. So, we have a great community of bankers, CAs, CPAs, and obviously NRIs, and the NRI team is also there to help you out. So we have a good number of 1,000 people on the main community group, and there are other country-wise groups also. So feel free to join what interests you. Okay.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Zia. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for taking time today, and have a great Sunday and rest of the weekend. Thank you. And we'll also, we are recording this webinar, so this will be available also after that. So, yeah. Thank you.